One of the fundamental problems with agents today is that in some ways they have too little context and in other ways they have too much. The way that Mesa works is that we actually run our own sandboxes. We've got our own kind of compute. On our sandboxes, we'll mount your code repository, and that's what we run our agent in.
What would you say is the one thing at Mesa that you guys have really cracked?
I think it's relationship building. Something that's really underrated about San Francisco, even by the people who live here, is just talent density, the network density of like incredible founders and companies who are all building in this tiny little slice of the world. We were able to onboard something like 20 to 50 initial customers just by going to our friends because we had built that like foundation of trust. They were willing to test out the product, be our beta testers.
Welcome, Ben.
Thank you, Girum.
Great to have you. So, Ben, you're a founder of a company called Mesa.
Yes, sir.
And according to the website, at least, what you guys are building is a code review tool that lives on your GitHub. There are tons of review tools out there. What makes you guys different is instead of just reviewing any bugs that might appear inside a PR that someone creates, you kind of have the engineering team define code standards, and you're able to pretty much like have an agent that is looking for security problems, an agent that is looking for style issues, and you have an army of agents tackling different parts of your code standard instead of just the PR. But when we're walking here, you told me your vision is much, much bigger, and you guys want to reinvent GitHub.
Yeah.
Tell me more about this.
Yeah. So I'm Ben. I'm one of the co-founders of Mesa, which is a seed stage tech startup here in San Francisco, and our mission is to reinvent the software development lifecycle for AI. And our first product is a code review product that I'm happy to talk about. But yeah, that's right. One of the things I was telling you is that externally we've released like one product today that we're really excited about, which is a code review product. But our mission is really centered around accelerating the entire software development lifecycle, which extends beyond just code review, and kind of the position that we're taking in the ecosystem is we're trying to build an AI native source forge. So basically new GitHub.
Gotcha. I'm kind of curious why GitHub in general matters anymore. Right? You've got agents writing most of the code. Probably, in a few years, humans won't even be touching code the same way that you and I don't really mess with assembly code anymore. As AI takes over, do we even need human-based Git technology, or is it all just, building just for agents and so that agents know what has been changed in the past?
Yeah, I think you hit on exactly our observations. So, one thing that we've noticed, I'm sure you've noticed this too, is that a lot of the highest performing startups here in San Francisco, and I'm sure across the world, are now driving most of the development lifecycle with AI. Mm-hmm. And, we've talked to companies that are spending like $3,000 per developer spinning up hundreds of Claude agents every day. And, they've got all sorts of agents doing like anything from, web design to, low-level systems work. And so I think we're seeing more and more that agents and AI are eating the software development lifecycle. Where I think that GitHub will, or something that is GitHub shaped will have a role in the future, is that fundamentally, code bases require collaboration. And so the role that GitHub really serves today is to be that kind of like collaboration plane. So you've got lots of human developers today. They're writing code on their local machines, and GitHub is the place where they reconcile all of those changes. That's where you deal with merge conflicts. That's kind of like your source of truth in the same way that a CRM like Salesforce is the source of truth for a sales team. So I think that you're always going to have this kind of like collaboration layer, this place where like all of your individual developers are figuring out how to reconcile their disparate changes. But I think what will change in the future is that more and more of your developers are not going to be humans. They're going to be AI agents operating autonomously, and they're going to be longer and longer running.
There are tons of code review tools out there, and I feel like you guys have discovered a secret. What is the secret that you guys know that maybe Cursor doesn't know, or any of the other ones don't really understand?
Yeah, I think that the secret that we came across, and I think a lot of other people are discovering this too, is basically the importance of context management. And I think this is actually something that you've seen a lot on Twitter probably in the past week. as you've seen more published works from Anthropic and from Cursor around using the file system as a kind of store of context. But this is something that Mesa took a bet on pretty early, which is that one of the fundamental problems with agents today is that in some ways they have too little context, and in other ways they have too much. And so when you look at the first generation of agentic products, and I would put most code review products on the market today in this bucket, the way that they operated is that you basically ran some kind of an indexer across a code base, and then at runtime, when you wanted to run a review, you would go in and kind of search your index database, gather a bunch of context about the pull request that you want to review, and then you would dump that context into the agent in your very first prompt. And the problem with that methodology is that, first of all, your agent gets very confused. And second of all, because you've consumed all of your context up front, the agent has a much smaller context window left to reason about your pull request. And so something that Mesa bet on really early was this idea that actually the best way to run an agent is to use one of the kind of like leading edge agentic harnesses. And so we actually use an agentic harness that's very similar to Claude Code. We run our agent in a sandbox, and instead of giving our agent massive context dump about your PR up front, we let the agent explore your code base at runtime, make tool calls, use the file system, and beyond that actually spin out sub-agents that are kind of like specialist reviewers that can look at maybe just security, or review your pull request just for kind of HIPAA compliance or something like that. And so because we have that context management layer, we find that our reviewers are able to avoid getting confused, and they're able to give you much more granular reviews, and also much more kind of customized reviews that really understand your business context.
So does this run on GitHub? Excuse my ignorance here, but I wonder if you have to take the code base, ship it out, or like whatever changes are being made, ship it out to your servers, do some analysis, and then return the review, versus you have something running on GitHub similar to what a GitHub action would be. What bucket does it fall in?
Yeah, so the way that Mesa works right now is that, if I can clarify your question, I think one of the things that is interesting about GitHub is that you've got built-in actions runners, and basically GitHub has kind of like some built-in like compute primitives. The way that Mesa works is that we actually run our own sandboxes, and so we've got our own kind of compute on our sandboxes. We'll mount your code repository, and that's what we run our agent in.
Makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So the product is just one piece of your company, right? There's go-to-market.
Yeah.
There's recruiting. One reason why I started this podcast is because as a CEO myself, I'm very insecure about company building. I feel like I know a lot about the product and how to maybe market it, but I suck at hiring. I suck at management. I'm trying to learn from others. What would you say is the one thing at Mesa that you guys have really cracked? Like, what is something that you guys do really, really, really well for your stage of company versus maybe others you see around you?
That's a good question. If I had to pick one thing, I think it's relationship building. This is something that we hear from a lot of our friends and advisors. Something that's really maybe underrated about San Francisco, even by the people who live here, is just the talent density, the network density of like incredible founders and companies who are all building in this tiny little slice of the world. And something that my co-founder and I have always enjoyed, and I guess that is part of what makes us good at it, is like connecting with all those people. And so we put in a big effort to really get to know like all the other founders out in the ecosystem, to bring people together, to introduce and connect all those people. And after we raised our seed and got an office, like one of our top priorities was to kind of create a space where we could bring a bunch of awesome people together. And so we've always got other founders, companies, friends coming in and out of the office. And so I think that's led to a lot of fruitful connections, both for us. It's led to some interesting insights on the product side, early design partners for different products that we're building out. And I think also like a lot of benefits from all those other people, that hopefully will be, reciprocated in the future, let's say. And so I think just, it's just kind of that pay it forward mindset and the relationship building.
And I bet it's very fun doing so as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you guys first started this company, were you guys, super connectors from the go, or is this something that you had to learn?
No, we definitely weren't. I would say that, my co-founder and I both had some roots in the startup community. We both actually worked in big tech and Microsoft a couple of years ago. We moved down to San Francisco and worked together at a Series B data infrastructure company. kind of heading up some of the infrastructure engineering there. And so we were, we had some roots in kind of the startup scene here, but I think it wasn't until we decided to actually start Mesa that we really connected with a lot of other founders and investors and really cool builders. And so I think that, it's a muscle that we've built over time, like this kind of network building or super connecting ability. But I suppose that, maybe there was a natural advantage in the sense that, like, we both just, we like to learn from other people, and we like to stay in touch with, like, really awesome people in the ecosystem. And so I think having that mindset that, I've always got something interesting to learn from somebody else, and that, I should try to kind of like pay forward all the favors and connections that other people have made for me. I think that's made us more successful at that.
When did you guys move to San Francisco?
Gosh, for me, about 3.5 years ago. For my co-founder, around 2 years ago.
Okay, so, and Mesa was started when?
Mesa was started a little under a year ago.
Were you guys relationship building before you started Mesa, or was it something that you guys realized you needed to do in order for Mesa to succeed?
I think it was more of a natural instinct. I'm not sure that we made, a conscious effort to kind of like build networks. If you're too focused on like networking, it kind of doesn't work.
Yeah.
When we've had people tell us that we're good at connecting or we're good at networking, I think that's probably because we don't see it as networking. We just see it as making friends.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. If we were to, distill a few nuggets about networking, we moved to San Francisco. I used to live here actually before, when I was working in big tech, but we kind of moved out, came back in, and we said, we have to build our network back here. I have no idea how to do that. Where would you say I should start? Like, do we host events? Do we just like spam people on LinkedIn and ask them to come hang out? Like, what are the steps in order to build a good network in San Francisco?
It's a good question.
Or I guess, how did you guys do it?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a bootstrapping phase here, probably, which is that, when you first arrive in San Francisco, let's say, you've moved from some other part of the country, some other part of the world, and you've got to kind of get your feet under you. You've got to figure out how to get out there and just like meet a couple of interesting people in San Francisco. And so I think the way to do that is that you either join a really interesting company. And by the way, quick plug, we're hiring at Mesa, especially for awesome engineers. And so I think that's one way to do it. And I think that's kind of like, the first way that my co-founder and I met interesting people in San Francisco, but I think there's also going to events. And I think the other thing that you could do is actually put yourself out there. And so, if you want to host events or, share interesting projects that you're building on like LinkedIn or Twitter, I think that's like another really good way to start to bring really interesting people into your network. And then I think what you find over time is that eventually you reach critical mass and, you make a couple of interesting friends, and when you start to like introduce them and you start to make connections between people, I think you find that there's just kind of a virtuous cycle there.
Are you guys hosting events at your office regularly?
We're doing it more and more. So we just got our office something like 2 months ago, and we've hosted one event so far. We're hoping to host a few more.
Okay.
So actually, if you know anyone who wants to co-host like a hackathon or some kind of interesting dinner, we'll probably be doing more of that soon.
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of people that I can introduce you to.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What are some outcomes of the network that you built? Is this the reason why you got into SBC, or maybe you guys landed some deals, hired a few people?
Yeah.
What are some like concrete results from your networking?
Yeah, I think that network plays a role in a bunch of different things. So, gosh, I could give a bunch of examples. I think maybe the one that comes to mind first is just the way that we got our first customers for Mesa for our code review product.
Can you share that story?
Yeah, sure. So we, there's kind of a longer prehistory to the company. It's probably not worth getting into just yet, but my co-founder and I really started building the company at South Park Commons, which is a really awesome kind of incubator, accelerator here in San Francisco. As I mentioned before, we were always interested in getting to know interesting people, and so we made a lot of friends in the South Park Commons community. And so as we started building out the first version of Mesa, our code review product, and we needed early testers, we had to find people who were comfortable spending a little bit of time dealing with a product that was initially buggy and maybe, not totally up to par. And so having that kind of like network of friends who knew us, who trusted us, and who knew that, we were both good people and good builders who would eventually kind of like polish the product into something that they would really love to use was really helpful. So we were able to onboard something like, 20 to 50 initial customers just by going to our friends, and saying, hey, we're going to prep you and tell you this is a beta product, but we'd love for you to give it a shot. And, I think because we had built that like foundation of trust, they were willing to test out the product, be our beta testers, help us polish the product. And then eventually, we're happy enough to then go tell all of their friends about the product as well. So.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. What's South Park Commons like? Also, do you guys apply to that with an idea in mind, or did they like recruit you to build something that they've been thinking about? Like, what's the whole model? How is it different from YC or a Speedrun?
Yeah. So I actually have a little bit of a vantage point on this because this is part of the complicated prehistory of the company. I actually went through Y Combinator, and my co-founder originally joined South Park Commons before I was part of the company, and effectively we went through like a merging process where we kind of joined forces and then ran the company out of the South Park Commons entity. And so I think there are like a lot of great programs. I've got friends who've done Speedrun. I did YC. My co-founder did South Park Commons, and I've got familiarity with that community. I think that the thing that we really like about South Park Commons is, I'd say like two things. Number one, I think it's a really tight-knit community that forms the South Park Commons because so many of the founders in South Park Commons work out of the South Park Commons office space. And so when you're working together with people in close proximity for multiple months on end, you start to develop like really close relationships. You learn a lot from the really smart builders there. Oftentimes you're the first customers of one another's products. You're bouncing ideas. So I think that's one thing that's really unique about South Park Commons. And then I think the other thing that's unique about SBC's philosophy is, it's actually in their tagline. They talk a lot about the -1 to 0 process. So this idea that, we often hear the stories of how a company went from kind of like big idea to massive blockbuster success. But what we don't hear a lot about is the story of how the founders went from quitting their jobs, having no income and having no idea, to coming up with that really interesting idea. And so, something that's cool about South Park Commons is that they're oftentimes more comfortable bringing in founders who are like super early in their exploratory journey and helping them like iterate through a bunch of different interesting ideas until they find the one that really sticks.
That makes sense. Time is on your right, by
Yeah.
the way. Last question, or a few set of questions. What's next for you personally? And we'll talk about the company later on. But are there some things that you feel like you need to improve on that you're working on? Like, how do you think about becoming a better CTO?
Yeah. It's a tough question because there's so many things I want to improve on. And I guess that's part of the founder journey. You always got to be improving on every dimension. I'd say the two biggest things for us right now are probably recruiting, which is a thing that you'll hear from almost every founder, that the most important ingredient in a startup is talent. And so you really have to figure out how you can get in the rooms with the best people and how you can convince them to kind of sign on to your vision and join the company. And so I think that's a big emphasis for us right now. Like, how do we really scale up the recruiting function? How do we make sure that the best people in the world understand what we're building and they get excited about it? I think the other thing that's really important is just increasing clock speed, and creating urgency, not stress, but maybe this feeling that like we're building something really big and we need to figure out how to get there as quickly as possible.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. My co-founder and I spent 2 weeks kind of figuring out what kind of people we want to hire to begin with. How do we talk about culture and values and everything? When I worked at Meta, they had a lot of that, and I was like, what is this? What is all this fluff? It means nothing. But you really want to hire people that are kind of aligned with what the company you're building. Folks aren't joining your company because of salary or anything else. They really need to resonate with the problem that you're solving. So that was the first piece. And then kind of like what you said, how do you increase clock speed? We spoke a lot about that as well. We'll share a little bit more after we leave. The car is about to park, but it was super great having you on the spot. I feel like we had a great conversation. We will kind of like distill everything that we spoke about into a finished podcast and clip it up into a few TikToks and Instagrams and just try to amplify your voice. I think what you guys are building is super awesome, and I'm excited to help you guys reach customers, reach potential recruits, etc.
Likewise, Girum.
Awesome.
Super excited.